What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Coach Jose, with another episode of the Shadowproof Podcast. As always, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the last episode. Raw and uncut version, right? That's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing that to everybody, raw and uncut. Weekly. We're going to drop, I'm going to try to drop an episode every week, every Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. I'm going to drop it for you guys to listen along. We will eventually have some guests, but we're going to keep it slow. You can follow me on Instagram at Shadowproof _. And let's keep it going. Tonight's episode will be shadow work. Shadow work, and what are you really avoiding? What are we really avoiding? And that's something to think about, right? What do we avoid on a daily basis, right? Most people, especially those of I'm a military veteran, I'm a Navy veteran, especially those who wore uniform. We've been trained to push emotions down and keep moving, not to show weakness. But what happens when those things you avoid become the shadows that control your life? This episode, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to dive deep into shadow work, exploring what you, male or female, might be avoiding and how to face it without fear, right? That's the important part, is in facing these shadows without fear. You guys heard me talk about shadowproof, being shadowproof, not being a slave or living in the shadows of the past. And that's important. Shadow work is simple. Shadow work to me, in my interpretation, shadow work is a process of facing parts of yourself you've pushed down into a dark place. Be that anger, grief, guilt, shame, whatever, whatever dark things that we push down that we choose not to think about, right? When you think about that, think about things, and I didn't really realize this until I started seeing a coach and going through the VA, and all that stuff, and talking to, therapists and colleagues of mine as I walk this path of mental health and helping, right? We push things so far deep down sometimes that we don't even remember, right? There's things that I didn't even correlate or remember that they were affecting me in my life, right? So just to share a little story, I always had this recurring dream, right? This recurring dream is do like military stuff, right? So I had this dream. And it wasn't until I was on a peer coaching session with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about, different things, and this dream just popped up in my head. And I never had, I'm not going to say I had this dream quite frequently, but over the years, I've been out of the Navy. I've been out of the Navy since since active duty Navy. I've been out since 2004. Reserve, I was out since been out since 2008, and I have this dream that it's my life today, right? I'm deploying my life today, family, kids, who I am today, and I'm deploying. But I'm deploying on a ship where I was on the USS Enterprise, and I'm deploying on the ship. And I'm getting ready to leave, right? We're getting ready to go on deployment. We're getting ready to get underway. And I'm walking around the ship, and I go to flight deck control and the yellow shirt locker and all that stuff. Those of you that don't know, I was a flight deck director. Arguably one of the best, not just joking. I was a flight deck director for the USS Enterprise. And I'm going to the yellow shirt locker, flight deck control. I'm in my coveralls, and I'm walking around, walking around the ship, walking around the flight deck, and I'm getting this nostalgia, right? I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm ready to go, right? And I've never been away from my family since I've been out of the military. And I know I'm about to deploy for, 6 months is what I'm thinking in the dream. And I'm walking around the flight deck, and same crew, same chain of command. Everything's the same, except I'm not the same, right? We're all older, right? The whole crew, we're all older. And Chief Payne, my boy Duke, Chief Payne comes up to me and says, "Hey, Petty Officer Byron, you're not working the flight deck this deployment." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm not what?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're not working the flight deck. We got our directors." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What the fuck you mean I'm not working on the flight deck? Nobody's better than me up there." And I'm arguing with him. And that's literally how, in that back and forth argument I'm having with Chief Payne is when I realize is when I wake up, right? It's like we never go on deployment. It's always at that one last part where I'm arguing with Chief Payne and he's telling me I'm not working on the flight deck, and I'm arguing like, who's better than me up there? You need me up there. This is the only way I'm going to be able to get through this. And I'm just arguing. I wake up. And it wasn't until this peer coaching session that I was telling you about. It's probably like a month ago, right? I'm actually taking a course to become ICF PCC certified. Anyway, so I'm in this peer coaching session, and I stop when I tell my peer coach this dream, right? And I'm like, and she's like, what happened? And I'm like, I just realized that all my life, and I can't remember what the topic of the coaching session was. Like we were what we were talking about. But at that moment, I realized that I'm always trying to prove that I'm good enough, right? Like, how can you tell me that I'm not good enough, or I can't work on the flight deck in the case of the dream? And I'm always trying to prove, and that's how I've lived my life, right? I went on the ship and I hated it when I first got there, right? And, I met all these great people, some not so great, but I met some great people that I still talk to this day that were like mentors to me, were honestly like fathers to me out there. And Chief Payne was one of those guys. And as much as me and him and bumped heads, and Lieutenant Field, he was an ensign back then. I don't even know where he's probably a commander now, or even higher. Those were like my mentors. And I'm sitting there and I'm realizing, like, I didn't want to be on the flight deck. I mean, I didn't want to be in the military. Forget about the flight deck. And I met these guys, and I met this guy, Petty Officer Torres. I'll never forget his name. And I was TAD. I was cranking back then. And I met him, and he was real cocky on the flight deck and all that stuff. And I remember when I finally got back from TAD, I was blue shirting from him, right? I was chalking and chaining, and I told him, I was like, I'm gonna be a flight deck director. I'm gonna be a yellow shirt. I'm gonna be better than you. And he was like, yeah, whatever, this is that, and whatever. It was friendly competition from there. But all in all, I worked so hard to be the best I could be in as a flight deck director, right? But in all that, I held that cockiness, right? That ego, that nobody was better than me up there, right? Like, I was the guy up there. My team was the guy, the team guys, the guys I had. We stood up one day and we worked night check, and we stood up and did the first launch in the morning, and we did it just to prove we were better than the day guys. Like it was all in friendly fun, but in all of that, it was always for me a proof, that something that I had to prove, right? It wasn't just good enough that my chain of command was telling me I was good enough, that they had me in the position that they had me in because they knew I was good enough. I used to even have gotten recognitions from, higher ups, and that wasn't enough for me, right? It was I had to prove more. I always had to prove myself. So I say that to say, what do you guys, what is it that you guys think of yourselves? What is it that you guys bury from yourselves that bleeds off into your everyday life, right? These things that we've been through, right? PTSD, and it doesn't necessarily have to be PTSD, and the things that we deal with today doesn't necessarily have to come from our childhood, right? They could come from experiences and failures or issues or traumas that we dealt with throughout life, right? And we hold on to that, right? No matter how much we say we're over it, there's certain things that we deal with throughout life that we hold on to, and we never let that go, right? Even if we tell ourselves, I don't care, I'm good, I'm not that person, I don't give a shit about that, I don't care how that person hurt me or how that person disrespected me, but we do hold on to that, and we end up bleeding on people that didn't cut us. Think about that for a second, right? And I had to come to terms with that, right? I had to come to terms with that in my life, where I bled on a lot of people that didn't cut me. I bled on my children. I bled on my relationship. I bled on colleagues, co-workers, right? Friends that I've had, friends that I've lost, friends that I just recently came back in contact with. Not even friends, like I just recently came in contact with reached out to a brother of mine, right? Like I grew up with that guy, right? And he grew up nothing like me, right? And when I say grew up nothing like me, I made different choices in my life, but he never saw me for what I saw myself as, right? His family never saw me for what I saw myself as. So think about that when we're going throughout our days and we have a bad moment and something triggers us, and how we express that to people. That's a deep thought. That's some deep shit right there. Anyway, just keep moving on. I'm going to touch a little bit on men, and this is good. This is good. When I say men, I want everybody to understand that when I refer to the man, I'm talking from the male perspective, right? But I think this is important for everyone to listen to. But I also think it's even more important. It's important for women to listen to, because, obviously, you may have sons, you may have brothers, you may have friends, you may have obviously a relationship, a husband, a boyfriend that you just trying to figure out. And I'm not sitting here trying to justify bad behavior or enable bad behavior. I'm just saying it's a good thing to listen to. So when we talk about men in the military, or anybody in the military, but again, talking from the male perspective, right? The military culture as a whole, no matter what branch of service you're in, it's a toughness mindset, right? It's tough, right? It's bury your feelings, get the job done no matter what, by any means necessary. Don't have any feelings, don't complain, just execute, right? You have a job to do, get it done, right? And it takes, and when you think about that, most of the people that go into the military are very, very young, right? Very, very young men and women. And they come from all different walks of life, so when you're in that space as a man, or in the space as anybody, think about this. Let's get off the military tip for a second. All mothers want their sons to be strong. All sisters want their brothers to be strong. And all women, wives, girlfriends, girlfriends, whatever, want their man to be strong. Why? Because we're the protectors, right? Where do we have time to be vulnerable? Where do we have time to show feelings, right? I had this conversation in a recent peer coaching session, and I asked the question. Obviously, she was a female, and I said, "Why is it simple?" And I've had this conversation with others, God kids, and all that stuff. And why is it so easy? Right? Females are natural mothers, right? It's a natural instinct, right? Baby's born. Naturally, you have that motherly instinct. Somewhere along the line, it changes, good or bad, whatever the situation may be, but it's a natural instinct. But why isn't that filtered off when it comes to your significant other, to your brother, to your friend, to your son? Well, to your son, you're going to do it right. That's my point, right? It's so easy to do it to your offspring, but it's not as easy. And is it the expectation that this man is strong and he's going to be okay? And I don't think so, right? I think there's two parts to that, right? There's the part of the female that may feel, right? Again, this is my perspective, that this man is strong and he's going to be okay. He's not going to talk about it. This is just how he is, right? That's what we say. Oh, he's just antisocial. He's just like that, whatever. But at the same time, as a man, we don't communicate that to our wives. To our sisters, right? We don't communicate that to them, right? We don't communicate that we're in a bad space and we need help. Or if we do communicate we're in a bad space, we don't get in depth because we're afraid to show weakness, right? Because we're trained, right? Since a young age. Don't cry, you're a boy, right? Don't do this because you need to be a man. You need to take care of your family one day. I did it to my sons, right? You need to be a man. Toughen up, right? This world's not gonna cater you. This world's not gonna baby you. And we all know this, right? It doesn't matter, obviously the world's evolved. It doesn't matter where we're at. The world's evolved, but think about that, right? Think about the societal expectations, right? Men are the providers, the protectors, no room for vulnerability. No room. We can't be vulnerable. We got to figure it out. From changing a light bulb to what's wrong, why is the check engine light in my car, right? We got to figure that out. And then we bury that, right? We bury those emotions and we avoid them. And we avoid them through overworking ourselves. Some turn to alcoholism, substance abuse, anger, isolating themselves instead of sitting there and working through those emotions, communicating those emotions, right? And I say men, but reality is men and women both do the same. Because we have a pre-thought that if I tell this person, male or female, how I feel about how they're treating me or how I feel about what they're doing, it's going to turn into an argument. They're going to react this way. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Why do we do that? Think about that. Think about that. And what happens? What's the cost? What do you guys think the cost is of that avoidance, right? PTSD, the most traumatic of them all, anxiety, depression, explosive anger. And I can relate to that because I've had my explosive anger, again, bleeding on people that didn't cut me because I got triggered over something. and this happens psychologically because our emotions have no outlet. We've held them in for so long, right? Now you have a strained relationship with a partner, with your children, with your coworkers, right? Because everybody feels this wall that you've built and they don't want to touch it. They want to, he's a toxic dude. This is a toxic person. I'm not even going to subject it just to men. This is a toxic person, right? Right? We almost do this. And when it comes to the military perspective and all that training that we have and hiding our emotions and all that stuff, and then as a man, hiding your emotions, and if you're a female that's been a single mother or whatever, hiding those emotions, once that, at some point you lose your identity, you lose who you are, right? Because it's over. If it's military, the mission's over, right? You're done, you're out. I had a real tough time when I first got out of the military, right? I couldn't deal with, this is civilian life. Civilians don't know the trauma that the military people go through, whether you're in war or not. Because when you're not in war, you're training for war, to be prepared for war. I served during 9/11. I served during Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. And Enduring Freedom was probably the hardest, 9/11, because I'm from New York. And I had family over there and I was deployed. So imagine my mindset, right? The key is when we talk about shadow work, right? I want to get into that. When we talk about shadow work, what are we talking about there, right? What are we talking about? How do we even begin to do the quote unquote, Coach Jose is talking about the shadow work, right? Number one is self-awareness, right? Awareness, noticing your triggers. When do you shut down, lash out, or withdraw? And what does that feel like, right? So let's talk about that, right? When we feel something's triggering us, right? Like me, I get a feeling in my left shoulder blade. I know I'm about to be triggered. I know somebody's going to trigger me. I know this person I'm talking to is going to trigger me. So I have one or two options. Either I let the conversation continue. I try to navigate the conversation in a different direction, or I cut the conversation short because I already know it's going to go somewhere I don't want it to go. It's going to bring something out of me I don't want. So self-awareness is important, right? Identifying those triggers, identifying those feelings, right? So how, you can exercise and just if you sit quiet for a second and just listen and just close your eyes and just identify the sounds that are going on in your room, right? Whether it's water dripping, whatever, right? That's how you train your body and you train yourself to notice these things, right? It's little things like that you could train yourself into noticing these things, right? Naming that shadow, what that trigger is, what that problem is, what that deep down hurt is. How do you do that? Journal, right? Saying it out loud, things you've been avoiding, right? So those are little things that you could do, right? There's more to that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to talk about the anger, right? So psychologically, right, from a medical perspective, a psychological perspective, we have this thing in the brain, the amygdala, right? It's a small pea-sized part of your brain that tells your brain flight. It's an emotion. It's a part of your brain that detects emotion. And it's the fight or flight response. And there's more to the fight or flight, and I'll get to that in a later episode. But but the fight or flight response when it comes to anger and lashing out. When we get to that point, right, our body knows two things. There's no in between, fight or flight, right? It's think about how to control that, right? Think about how can we control that because of this trigger, and we're identifying the trigger, right? And not always do we do that, but in the process of anger, it's like if you take a pot of boiling water, and as the water's boiling, there's no reflection, right? Right? There's nothing. You can't see clearly through the water because it's moving, it's boiling, right? But when the water settles, you could see clearly through it, right? So if we take that analogy or that example of the boiling water and say, okay, well, if I don't respond right now because I'm so angry and I'm not going to respond correctly, then maybe I should wait a second, right? I should take a minute or take a couple of minutes. Sometimes it takes longer than that, depending on the situation. But it comes from that self-awareness piece and noticing that you're triggered, right? Before reacting. And you hear that a lot is noticing that you're triggered and not reacting. And that's difficult sometimes, especially when you have traumas and this trigger runs so deep, right? Whether it's, again, coming from a past relationship, a childhood. You guys heard me on the last podcast, and I was talking about how, communication for me was coming across abrasive, right? Coming across abrasive because, or anger, coming from an angry state. Why? I was coming from an angry state because for me, it was that's the only way I could get my point across. But that was a normality for me, right? That was, like I said in my last episode, that was a Tuesday in my house, right? It's what I grew up with. And I bled that over onto my kids. I bled that over onto my relationship. Bled that over on anything, every aspect of my life, and didn't even realize it, right? People have told me so many times, we go through life and we say, oh, I'm not going to be like my parents, right? I'm not going to be like my dad. I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm going to be better than that. And I think to some aspect we do, right? We work hard to not be, just like them. But we have to remember, children learn from what you teach them, but they learn more profoundly from what they see, right? So starting at a very, very young age, they're learning, they're absorbing all these energies, be it toxic, be it arguments, being whatever. And we did that, right? So we subconsciously, remember what I said in the beginning of the episode, we hold on to things that sometimes we don't even remember. And we bleed out on others. We bleed those emotions out on others because we never talk about them, right? We don't talk about those things because those are things that we want to bury. We don't want to relive those moments. We don't want to relive those things, right? That was a trauma. What I give you an example of a trigger of mine is promising children. One, abusing children is a bad trigger for me, and promising children things you're never going to do. Like you're not. Why is that? Why is abusing children such a trigger for me? Deep shit. My stepdad, my middle sister's dad, he was alcoholic and a cokehead, right? And he literally used to, I remember this day vividly. We dropped my mother off at work one morning, and I don't remember if I was sick or I was going to school. I can't remember right now at the time. And as soon as he dropped my mother off, he beat the shit out of me. Like, I don't even know if I did something. I don't remember. I was young. I had to be probably 9, 10 years old, right? Because I started living with my grandmother I used to go with my grandmother's every weekend, but living with my grandmother probably went probably around 11. So that's a trigger for me, right? A huge trigger for me, right? To this day, I repulse the presence of that guy, right? I don't want anything to do with him. I let it go, but it's still in me, right? So we think about, well, I share that with you guys to think about the traumas that you may have faced or you may have seen. You might have not went through it, but maybe you saw your mom go through it. Maybe you saw your dad go through it. Maybe you saw a family member go through it, right? But always remember this. There's always somebody that, and I'm not justifying, so don't even take it that way, right? There's always somebody that went through some shit worse than you did, right? And we don't know the traumas our parents had, right? Shit they went through mentally as a child before we were born. Things we don't remember, right? We got to learn to look at things from a different lens. So when we talk about shadow work, I want you guys to think about that. Think about these deep traumas that you have inside, these deep things that you have inside, and start with self-awareness. Start with being aware of this traumas, facing them, right? Face them head on. Because I'm going to be the first one to tell you that I went the majority of my life thinking I could fix myself by myself. Now, don't get me wrong, right? It is not your partners, your wife, your kids, your mom, your dads, your whoever. It's not their responsibility to fix you. You got to be prepared to fix yourself. But you can't do it by yourself. You need support, right? You need somebody to talk to. You need somebody to release to. You need somebody to create that safe space for you to be vulnerable and them understand you without judging you. And the reality is unfortunately, we live in a day and age where it's very, very hard to find that person, right? To find that person or persons where you could be completely vulnerable with and just let it out. Be yourself. Be vulnerable. Speak about your trauma. Speak about your hurt, and people ask me what made me get into this space of mental health, right? Of being a whole person coach and starting and doing a men's group and anger management and all this stuff. And it was because I realized that not a lot of people would necessarily not a lot of people would necessarily think it's okay to talk to somebody, especially in marginalized communities and men, to be honest, to be 100% upfront with you, right? Because men are very, very macho, right? We're egotistical. We don't need help. We don't need anybody's help. We're fine, right? Hey, bro, you good? Yeah, I'm good, bro. Same shit, different day. That's what we tell everybody. Deep down, we're destroying ourselves daily, right? We become quiet. We become numb, right? We become numb to the feelings. We become numb to the situation because we think we don't deserve better, or we're going to get through it. We'll figure it out. What happens when you never figure it out? Huh? What happens? I want you guys to think about that. And those of you listening, this is not just subjective to a man, but this is also subjective to anybody, right? Think about that. Sometimes it's talking to a friend you could confide in. Sometimes it's talking to a coach like myself. Right. Sometimes it's talking to and again, back to that, like I got into this because I could relate to a lot of shit people go through. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I could fix your problem, but I can help you find the answer, because the reality is we could be going or have gone through the same exact situation, but your variables are different. Your situation is different than mine. Even though it's the same situation, the causes of that situation could be completely different. So how I fixed my situation, or how I'm going about fixing my situation, is not going to fix your situation. My job is to help you like I wish I had somebody help me, or like somebody eventually did help me, to find those answers to help ease or fix my situation, right? And I'm still working on that, right? There's decisions I still haven't made. There's things I haven't done, because I'm taking it slow as you go, slow progress, right? And that's how you got to take it, one day at a time. But if you think, one, you could do this by yourself, two, that it's just going to go away and fix itself because you're supplementing it with alcohol or drugs or being around people or that you really don't want to be around, or keeping yourself busy at work, it's not going to fix itself. You got to let that shit out. You got to figure out how and why and how am I going to fix this? Where can I get the answer? Right? And that's another reason why I started this podcast. Because once you get numb, and we're all, if you're listening to this podcast or going to listen to this podcast, I'm telling you, you've been there before, trying to figure out why. Why am I hurting? Why do people keep fucking me over? Why do I keep dealing with this shit? We all ask ourselves that same question. But where the self-awareness, feeling the anger, feeling that hurt, feeling that pain, right? And why, right? We choose for that situation to hurt us, right? And I want to be clear on what I'm saying, what I mean by that. We didn't choose to go through the situation. We're choosing to let it hurt us for so long because we don't know how to deal with it. We're choosing to be angry about the situation for so long because we don't know how to deal with it. We don't even know where to start. It's not that we don't want to deal with it. And sometimes it is. But most of the time it's that we don't know how. So the easy thing is to say, fuck it, I'm not going to deal with that right now. I'm just going to move on from it. And then it festers, and then something small turns into something big, and then this art, and then we start lashing out, we start this. But we have to learn, we have to be aware. We have to resolve. We have to figure out what can we do. And we can't find, those answers are not going to, I've been on this mission to better myself, and I'm a much better person than I was yesterday, much better person than I was 6 months, a year ago. But I'm by all means still. I relapse. I'm a recovering crash out. I'm traumatized. I'm hurt. I used to say I was broken. I'm a broken man. I'm a broken motherfucker. Reality is I am broken. But that shouldn't define me. That shouldn't say I can't move on from that. I can't keep bleeding on people that didn't cut me. These are people, my loved ones, people I love, people I care about, people I want to protect. But at the same time, those same people I love, those same people I want to protect, I'm hurting them. I made a comment to my brother, Steven. Big shout out to my boy, Steven, right? Me and him grew up together, and he shared with me something. He said, you know, when you left to the military and you were gone and it was real, that shit hurt me. And that shit got me real emotional, right? He's probably gonna kill me for putting this on the podcast, right? He's my brother. I'm sharing shit. You just gonna thug it with me, baby. We in this together. And that shit hurt me when he said that. But at the same time, I was secure enough in who I am today to say to him, my brother, me leaving was not because I don't love you. Me leaving at the time, I may not have thought about it this way, but today I know that I couldn't have been the friend and brother that you needed because I was fucked up. My mind was on some different shit. And I probably would have did some fuck shit to you or vice versa because of something I did. And we would have never spoke again. Right? But here we are 30 years later, talking like we never left, right? Telling each other that, hey, you my boy, you my brother, right? Telling us these things. And I say that to say that sometimes you gotta put yourself in you gotta say to yourself, I can't keep bleeding on the people that didn't cut me. I can't keep hurting the people that have been trying to help me. I can't keep doing that shit. Because eventually you're going to end up by yourself. And then, what are you going to do? You're going to play a victim, tell yourself, see, this is what I'm saying. I can't fuck with nobody. I can't trust nobody. It's not that you can't fuck with nobody, can't trust nobody. Yes, to an extent. Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, there's people that we push away because we don't know how to deal with our emotions, how to deal with the shit that we have inside. How to communicate, how to sit down and say, yo, this is why I'm fucked up. This is why we going through this because I'm broken and I'm trying to figure out how to fix myself. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this hole. Not a financial hole, not a physical hole, a mental hole of this shit that's been holding me back, this shadow that I keep living in for years that I can't figure out how to shake this bitch. That's the deep shit right there. And celebrating. I say, you know what? I celebrate small wins every day. Every single day I say, you know what? I've accomplished something. Whether it's the smallest thing or the biggest thing, I try to make it a point to accomplish something and be better than I was yesterday. And I fuck up constantly. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm perfect. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't fuck up because I fuck up constantly. But the reality is I try every day my hardest to work on my communication, to work on how I communicate. Remember, you're responsible for what you say, but you're not responsible for how the other person interprets it. But how do we communicate effectively so the person understands? Because our significant our significant other, right, our wives, our girlfriends, whatever, they fell in love with this person. So we're so afraid to not be that person because if we're not that person, then they're not going to love me anymore. Well, guess what? I'm here to tell you, if they don't love you, because that's you, the person they meant, not that it wasn't you, but it was a part of who you are. It wasn't who you are. So if you can't be your vulnerable yourself, and if being yourself causes them not to love you, then guess what? They don't really fucking love you. They shouldn't really fucking be there. Because that's the fucking problem is we hold on to people in our lives because we think that this person is the best we could do. I fucking despise the term deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't. I don't want to deal with no devil. How about that? No. Why do I have to deal with the devil I know? Why can't I deal with no devil? Fuck that phrase. Fuck that term. Right? I want to heal. I want to be better. I want to be happy. Right? We all have things we want to accomplish, goals we didn't accomplish because of fucking traumas we held on to for so long. Whether it's the feeling of us not feeling good enough, like we couldn't be that. Like we're not good enough. Oh, we made excuses. Oh, I don't have the money to do that. I can't do that. I can't be better. I can't do better. I can't. I'm here to tell you that's bullshit. It's not that you can't, it's that you don't want to. Because you get tunnel vision. You say, this is what I'm going to do because this is where I feel safe. Success happens outside of that safe zone. Success happens outside of comfort. If you're comfortable, you're doing something wrong. You got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's that real shit. Think about it. I mean, these shows, Game of Thrones, the Iron Throne. What's the significance of listen, I dissect and break down every fucking thing because that's just who I am. What's the significance of the Iron Throne? The reason why would the King of Kings, right? Right? Because the subject, to my understanding, I didn't see every fucking episode, but I saw enough, right? The king who sits on the Iron Throne is the ruler, is the big dog. Why the fuck does he want to sit on an Iron Throne? Right? Think of the significance of that for a second. Because a king cannot be lazy or uncomfortable. Lazy and comfortable. A king cannot be lazy and comfortable, because when you're lazy and comfortable, you don't do anything else. You don't chase anything else. You don't look for anything else, because you're comfortable. I'm good. This is safe. I'm safe sitting here, whatever it is you're doing. I'm comfortable in this job that I fucking hate waking up to every day, and they don't pay me shit and they don't appreciate me. I'm comfortable being in this relationship that I really shouldn't be in, but I'm in it because I'm dealing with the devil I know instead of the devil I don't know, because this is all I could get, because this is all I deserve. Making excuses for your part. Yes, take accountability is definitely a part of that, right? Taking accountability for your actions is absolutely a part of the situations you're going through, right? We're the architects of our situations. We're the architects for many reasons, and we'll go over that in later episodes. That's, I don't want to be here for 2 hours. I don't want to keep you guys hold you guys up, but when you think about that, we make excuses for the things that we're dealing with, and we don't make change because we're comfortable. Because human nature is to be resistant to change. Resistant to change. I used to have a saying that I used to live by. And I had arguments. Crazy arguments about, not crazy arguments, but I used to have disagreements about this mindset I had, right? I used to say, I'm going to strive for perfection, even though I know it's unattainable. Think about that shit for a second. I'm going to strive for perfection, even though I know it's unattainable. Because my thought process was, even though I know I'm striving for something I can't get, that's impossible for me to achieve, at least I'm that much further ahead than I was yesterday. And I always fucking failed. I always fucking fucked it up somehow. Whether it was a career, whether it was a job, whether it was a situation, whether it was a friendship, whatever, I always fucked it up. But I still lived on that code. I'm going to strive for perfection, even though I know it's unattainable. And my coach ended up telling me, right? Because I ended up seeing a coach, just so you guys know. I saw a coach. She's great, love her to death. She's helped me through a lot of stuff. And she said to me, perfection has no growth. Because once you're perfect, that's it. So even though you say you're striving for perfection, right? Even though you say you're striving for perfection, even though it's unattainable, you're striving for something that has no growth. Let's think about that. I had to put that into perspective. Perfection. Okay, once I'm perfect, there's nothing for me to do. I'm not growing from that, right? She told me, why don't you strive for excellence? Because in excellence, there's progress, and in progress, there's growth. Oh, shit. Let me say that to you one more time. Why don't you strive for excellence? Because in excellence, there's progress, and in progress, there's growth. And that changed my whole mindset. That changed my whole thought process. Right? And I applied that, and I try to continue to apply that to every aspect of my life, whether it's a business, whether it's my personality, who I am as a man, how I deal with people, right? How I've dealt with people, how I continue to deal with people. And let me tell you something, when you're changing, things get even more fucking difficult, because now you're conscious. Once you're self-aware, now you're conscious of, I'm not going to react like I used to. So you're fighting yourself internally not to be that person anymore. Me, not to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy, right? I want to bury that guy. I don't want to be that guy anymore. Right? And when you get to that point, you realize, shit, I'm fighting myself. So now that's kind of like a trigger for me. It is anyway. But then the people you've been around your whole life, parents, family, your wife, your kids, in the beginning, they don't believe that shit. So now not only are you working to fix yourself, but you're working to prove you're not that person anymore. And you gotta eat that shit. But it ain't easy. Again, you have to have that self-awareness, right? I'm talking about all this because this is part of the shadow work. And it starts with self-awareness, understanding that shit about yourself, understanding that this is a fucked up trigger of mine. This is what it is. How you figure that out. Living in your emotion for a second, sitting down. Sometimes it's just being by yourself for a second and thinking about it, right? Taking a walk, having a talk with a friend, going to see a coach, whatever it is. This is different for everybody, right? This is not one size fits all. People gonna deal with things differently, but one thing I know and two things for sure is you definitely need help figuring it out. You definitely got to change something, right? The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. And if we think that if you look in the mirror today, if you looked in the mirror today and said, and you ask yourself, why is my life still going like this? And you could repeat things that have transpired that you have done, not about what anybody else has done. Reactions, decisions that you have made, and you've done them in recurring different timelines of your life. There's your answer. Now, what's the cause of that? How do I figure that out? Why am I stuck? Am I stuck? Why am I stuck? Why can't I make a decision? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough? Why do I feel like I'm just stuck? That's something we got to really sit down and let marinate. I got to patent that, right? Let that marinate. Let that marinate. Think about that. Could be journaling. I journal from time to time. I'm not going to say I do it every day, but I do it from time to time. I journal. I write it down, right? I do this podcast. This shit lets out a lot of shit inside of me, right? Me helping you guys or people listening to this podcast helps me, right? It helps me because I wish I had that. I wish I had an outlet when I was in a fucked up stage, when I was in a fucked up dark place in my life where I felt nobody. I could be in a room full of people that claim or say they love me and show me they love me, and I still feel alone. I still feel alone because we become so numb that eventually, once we're numb, we're just existing. You know what I'm saying? People, hey, what do you want to do? Oh, what you want to do? What you trying to do? What you trying to get into? Oh, whatever's whatever, right? We don't make decisions, right? We just go with the flow, right? And we prefer not to. We prefer just be by ourselves, or we prefer that's that depression shit. That's that mental fucked up shit in our head. You gotta start with self-awareness. We got to start with figuring out what it is, talking to somebody. We got to start somewhere, ladies and gentlemen. And it's hard. It's hard for women. And and coming from a man, it's hard for men. That shit is hard. It's deep, especially when you got nobody to talk to, especially when you feel like you may have somebody to talk to. You just don't feel that. You don't feel that you have that safe space to be that vulnerable person that you are, that you need to be at this moment, right? Because people tell you, oh, what's wrong? Oh, I'll help you get through it. But at the end of the day, you doing it by yourself. They're not helping you. It just sounds good. Something that sounds good. I'm gonna help you get through it, but at the end of the day, you're doing it yourself. And I'm sitting here telling you, it's nobody's job to fix you. You have to fix yourself. You got to put the work. You got to get in the mindset to say, I'm ready to change. I'm ready to be shadowproof. I'm ready not to live in the shadows of the past. I'm ready to put in this work because I want to be better. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better man. I want to be better, but you got to change for you. Can't change for everybody else. It's got to start with you. And I promise you, when you start changing yourself, when you start working on yourself, everything around you just gets better. You enjoy things better. Even the smells and the tastes of things are different. And I'm here to tell you, I'm telling you from experience, but you got to learn how to deal with that trauma first and put in that work. Got to put in that work. Got to stop making fucking excuses. Got to stop bleeding on people that didn't cut you, and got to face the music. Got to face the music. Don't run away from the fire. Run to that shit. Run to that shit. Strive for excellence, because in excellence there's progress, and in progress there's growth. That's some deep shit to think about right there, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, I appreciate you guys listening to episode 2 of the Shadowproof Podcast. Shadow work. Hey, self-awareness starts right there. Naming the shadow. Journaling. Saying it out loud. Talking to somebody about it. Right? Talking, counselor, coach, whatever you think it is. Right? And then how you deal with it, right? Grounding yourself, going to work out, whatever it is, right? Because you can't just numb it. And listen, burying yourself in the gym is not gonna fix your problem either. I'm just keeping it real. You gotta let that shit out. Gotta talk to somebody. Gotta figure out the situation. Gotta put in the work. It's definitely a thing. I want to encourage you guys before we get off. Take one small step this week toward that shadow. Write about it, talk about it, reflect on it. And think about that. You men out there, I'm putting together this men's group. I've been doing it for a while. The only reason I haven't launched it yet, or we haven't started, is because I want to do it right. It's going to be all virtual. Contact me, coachjose79@gmail.com. If you want to learn more about it, it's going to be once a week. I'm going to do it in a 6 to 12 week block, right? Because it takes time for it to work. And listen, I started one about a year ago with a group of friends of mine, and it was a godsend. It was a godsend for me. They loved it. It's good. It's a safe space. I encourage you guys to think about it. Like I said, reach out to me. It's going to be once a week, right? About 7:30, 8 o'clock, again, virtually. About an hour to an hour and a half. Take that time, set that time aside to do that. Take that time aside, set that in, and start somewhere, because that could lead into something bigger. Those of you that don't know, I also do group coaching and one-on-one, whole person coaching. This is not just something, this is a passion of mine. This is something I'm doing because I really love this shit. I really think it's something I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm not for everybody. If you guys want to check me out, we could set up a quick 30, 45 minute call, again, virtually, and get to know if I'm a right fit for you, you're a right fit for me. And we go from there. Please don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. This podcast streams on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe, and keep listening. Keep listening, keep working on yourself, and keep striving to be shadowproof. I want you guys to have a great week. Leave a comment if there's anything you want to touch on. Please, I encourage you guys to comment and reach out to me again, CoachJose79@gmail.com. Talk to you soon. And like I said, continue to be shadowproof.